So I'm going to talk a bit about design process or design thinking in the context of the the videos I've been making. One of the things, the way, if you look at my first videos, they are a bit more rough, a lot of shaking in how the video is produced. And as I go through this process of making my videos, I'm using different forms of feedback to improve that process. So a lot of it is this self-observation on those videos and then seeing where I need to make improvements. So for instance, you can see this little black thing right here. That's a piece of foam, and the intention on that is that if there's wind that blows through, it doesn't impact the microphone. And I'm still prototyping different ideas on how to make that foam. I have another piece that wraps around it, but the problem with that design is that it falls off. And this design I basically punched a hole in the foam and just forced it down through the earphone right here, and then pushed it down. And that doesn't fall off, but it doesn't seem like it covers the whole microphone. So I'm going to probably make another variation. You'll see a bit later on that design theme. The other thing I've noticed that if I walk around with my camera, even with a tripod holding it, it still is a bit shaky. So what I've been trying to do is do more still shots, just like this. I have the tripod sitting in a stationary position. I try to pick a scene that is kind of interesting. So this scene right here is we're in it's like a youth Olympic park, and I've got an interesting structure right over there. I don't know what its purpose is, but it's interesting. I'm in the shadow of the Star Trek sort of engine building that we have over there. I don't know if you can see it. It's between the trees right over there. So the way this design thinking process is working is just view the videos and improve on them. So for an example, I've talked about process in my other videos, but I would do a whole video of an event, maybe walking through a different area, and then at the end I would talk about the design process. This time I'm breaking it up. I'm going to make a video that is specific to the experience of Nanjing, and then make a separate video about the design process. So that's what this video is. I'm not going to put them together. The other challenge I've found is making my videos short enough. So that's the attempt of making this specific video and improving on that. The other thing I look at is when I start a process, I always start it with the most basic tools. I don't buy an expensive piece of equipment. I try to work with what I have. And I also think about that in design thinking when we're teaching students. The challenge that we have within schools, and especially schools that are well-resourced, is we've got a lot of funds to buy the best equipment. The problem when you buy the best equipment, you don't understand the why. Why would you want to have that best equipment? And you want that process to actually go through with the students. So in an ideal situation, when you're working on a project with a student, you want to have the worst tools, the worst resources. You don't want a lot of money, because when you have the lack of money, the lack of resources, then you become more inventive or innovative in your solutions. So that's the example with this microphone with the foam. I don't have a sophisticated microphone. I'm just using what is available. I'm not using a sophisticated camera. I'm just using an iPhone on a tripod. I'm not using a sophisticated stabilizer I'm trying to look on the internet and see what people do using the tools that are readily available, that you just have on hand. And I see the same process with any design thinking project with students. So if we go back to getting the best resources, what you want is the students to figure out that process. And the challenge is that if we think about planning for a class, where a teacher plans for a class, if you plan it perfectly, then you've lost all the opportunities for the students to sort of work out the problems, solve those problems. So the best, I think, design thinking class is one where we're trying to plan out opportunities to have problems. And the best way to do that is not to plan the solution. And I think from a teaching standpoint, that's counterproductive. That's not what we do as teachers. So that's in a nutshell one of the components of design thinking and in learning that I can share with you now. I'm going to stop at this point because it's getting beyond 5 minutes on this video. All right, I'm back. What's interesting about design process is that when you have, sometimes you have to talk out the problem, and that the value of design in that situation is that you talk out the problem, and for some reason an idea comes out of that. So in this case, I talked out the problem. The problem was with the microphone, and the previous design I had was I just punched the foam through, and it had a very small surface area that was covering the microphone. By me talking about this problem, about the microphone, just to this camera, after I finished the video, I was like, I had an idea. Okay, so I have still a piece of foam with me, and I've got with me, I made sure that I brought this X-Acto knife with me. And what I did was, if you look at it, the foam was much bigger. And what I did is I took this flat piece of foam and I cut 3 holes, and I wove the microphone in and out like that. And so what we have is a bigger piece of foam, and it's got more coverage, and it looks ugly as anything, but that's what prototyping is. It's just just experimenting with what you have and see how it works. Now, there's a certain benefit to having this big ugly piece of foam. And I only think of it right now. Look how I'm holding it. Not a problem holding it. I can bring it close and far away. If I wanted to actually have an interview with someone, I could actually hold this piece of foam right to the person's mouth or near the mouth, and they could speak to it, and it would work just as well as any other professional microphone. So here, this is perfect example of design thinking with the microphone. I think the next thing is, how do you make it look a bit more pretty than this? So I've got lots of foam back at school, and I'll probably further develop this so that it doesn't look so ugly. But there's tremendous improvements over the last one, and we'll be going into some very windy situations, and we'll see how well it works in those environments.